Horror is the only form of literature that is named solely after the effect it is intended to produce. Horror books include believable events that are so gruesome or revolting that the audience reacts with fear or disgust. While some science fiction and fantasy books may have a horror feel, true horror fiction creates a feeling of something obscenely, transgressively impure. While reading a horror book, there comes a belief that there is a threat to one's body and/or culture and/or world, as well as the sense that there is something monstrously wrong. Although Dracula by Bram Stoker, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and The Headless Horseman by Trixie Belden continue to be popular with young adults, more modern horror books include elements of romance, mystery, and even comedy. Vampires and werewolves can have human dimensions, serial killers can acquire immortality and possess supernatural powers. Good still triumphs over evil, but the hero or heroine often plays with his or her life. The best-known writers of horror fiction are R.L. Stein and Stephen King. In his Goosebumps series for children and younger teens, the original Fear Street series, and the new Fear Street Nights for older adolescents, R.L. Stein creates both easy reading tales and spine-chilling dramas that have attracted a wide audience of readers and give him the best-selling author in the United States. His works give kids a positive reading experience to which they can respond since the horror is fun, yet also familiar. In addition, it is the teenagers themselves who overcome the evil forces. Writing for teenagers and adults, Stephen King also blends the mundane with the fantastic. Many of King's characters are basically decent, normal people who reside in small towns and lead uneventful lives until some powerful and usually evil force invades their peaceful existence. Others have special talents or psychic abilities. Some of the early horror fiction that is still read today was written in the 19th century. These include works by Edgar Allan Poe, such as The Mask of Red Death, A Tale of Terror. In the 20th century, the pulp magazine Weird Tales, which was published from 1923 until 1954, presented authors such as H.P. Lovecraft, Frank Belknap Long, and Robert Bloch. In the later part of the 20th century, fueled by the popularity of the television series about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, teens have turned to the vampire novels of Amelia Rhodes and Annette Klaus, as well as those by adult author Anne Rice. Recently, interest in novels that deal with the paranormal has increased. While not as scary as mainstream horror books or psycho-slasher novels, these books include demons, witches, and ancient gods and goddesses. Neal Shusterman's Darkness Creeping contains a number of different types of horror stories. It is difficult to categorize works of horror. There are dark fantasies or gothic fantasies which incorporate a feeling of horror but are set in the fantasy world, and paranormal romances which combine romance with the occult. Books of supernatural horror, which may include vampires, ghosts, werewolves, and the occult, are set in the normal world but are often called weird fiction. Included in this type are Blood and Chocolate and The Transition of H.P. Lovecraft. Works of pure horror are shaped entirely by the sense of horror they produce. In these, both the protagonist and the reader recognize that a threat exists from an invasive presence. Examples of pure horror books are Fear Nothing by Dean Koontz, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King, Haunting Hour, Chills in the Dead of Night by R.L. Stein, and Coraline by Neil Gaiman. In 2009, Coraline was made into a motion picture film.
door go? Whoa. Coraline, I don't have time for you right now. We've been waiting for you, Coraline. I knew it was real. You do like it here, don't you, Coraline?
What's wrong, Coraline? Don't you want to play? Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep.
Works of romantic horror include elements of both romance and physical or psychological horror. For example, in vampire romance horror books, the main character may fall in love with the vampire. Works of paranormal or unexplained phenomena are also included. It should not be surprising that horror books capture the attention of adolescents who want to experience frightening situations. They enjoy reading about vampires, the Walking Dead, the invasions, and the assaults because they realize that everything is just make-believe. In horror fiction, young adults can read about situations and everyday events such as school, proms, malls, sports, and parties, in which they, not adults, are in control. By confronting imaginary fears, they are confronting their own anxieties in a safe place while learning to accept the responsibilities associated with becoming adults. Many educators are reluctant to use horror novels in the classroom. This may be because, like science fiction, they have a history based in pulp magazines. Horror fiction is often seen as sensational rather than serious, and with the focus on popularity rather than quality. Also, there may be reluctance to use horror fiction because of anticipated complaints from parents or others in the community. However, not all horror fiction can be written off so easily. The appeal of this type of literature among young adults provides an avenue to reach even reluctant readers. The key is to balance quality and popularity to find books that both entertain and enrich readers. Horror literature shares several characteristics with well-written science fiction and fantasy. Horror, however, has at least one special characteristic. The horror should not just be for sensationalism. It should encourage the reader to explore the reasons behind the actions rather than merely portray a terrifying or gory situation. When selecting horror fiction, make sure you look for books that are well written and age appropriate. Look to see if females are singled out as victims or stereotyped as being helpless in a particular need of assistance because of their gender. The events of violence or horror in the novel should teach a lesson or have a meaning and not just be used for sensationalism. Fortunately, some resources are available to help you select horror fiction. The Horror Writers Association gives the Bram Stoker Award each year. Between 2001 and 2004, there was a special category that included books for young people. The periodical Rue Morgue Horror in Culture and Entertainment covers horror. I squinted at the small writing engraved under the crow. Disturb our rest at your own risk. Another shiver ran down my back. Disturb their rest? Did I just disturb their rest? Time to go, everyone! I could hear Mrs. Webster calling from the graveyard gate, but I stared down at the tombstone I had just knocked over, the crow, lying on the ground. With a groan, I pulled off the backpack and set it up against the tree. Then I bent down and struggled to pull the big stone back up. Oh, wow, I muttered. It weighed a ton. I couldn't budge it. Hey, somebody help me, I called. but they were all heading down the hill, even Audra. "Hey, wait up!" I called after her. I let go of the big stone, stood up, and took a step toward the gate. A hand reached up from the ground and wrapped itself around my ankle. I opened my mouth to scream, but only a tiny squeak escaped. The hand tightened its grip around my ankle. I could feel the cold of its flesh wrap around me. "No!" I uttered a low moan of horror. I kicked hard and burst free. I lurched forward. My baseball cap flew off. I didn't stop to pick it up. I ran through the broken gate. "Wait up! Wait up!" I shrieked. A hand from the grave!" Audra, Frank, Buddy, and a few other kids turned to stare at me. "Spencer, what's your problem?" Buddy called. I spun away from them and stared back into the graveyard. Little did I know that I'd be back into the graveyard before the night was over, with no chance of getting out alive.